Hello, Trinity Tigers. Welcome to the third Trinity Enrichment Lifelong Learning webinar, a benefit for Trinity alumni. I am Leslie Hollingsworth, class of 1988, and president of your Trinity University Alumni Association. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, financial consultant and author of Money Smarts for You, The Basics, Barbie O'Connor. She has spoken on topics including money management, investments, team building, auto racing, and women's issues to groups at Trinity University, University of Texas at San Antonio, St. Mary's University, North San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, Merrill Lynch Chamber Chairman's Club, Indianapolis Women's Club, and Alpha Chi Lambda, and the International Women's Forum. She recently published Money Smarts for You, The Basics, a book about money and life planning for high school and college students. Topics such as cash and credit management, renting an apartment, getting a job, buying a car, getting married, buying a home, and charitable giving are covered in 12 short weeks of daily readings. Her book is available on Amazon and at Barnes & Noble. Additionally, Barbie hosts a weekly online radio show called Money Smarts for You, where she covers the financial topics that affect your everyday life. Today, Barbie will explain how to set up an expense plan, understanding the basics of loans, and organizing your financial information so you can have a plan for paying off any debt that you may have now or in the future. Also on this webinar, we have Glendi Gaddis, Assistant Vice President of Student Financial Services at Trinity University. Glendi, with her 25 years of experience in student financial services, will share her expertise about the current portfolio of student loan opportunities at Trinity. Now, please submit your questions during the presentation, and we'll get to as many of them as time permits following the presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, our presentation will begin.
Welcome to today's Trinity Enrichment webinar about the 7 things you need to know about managing your personal finances and paying off any kind of debt, but particularly student loan debt. The first 10 to 15 minutes, we're going to talk about setting up a budget or expense plan. Then we're going to take about 5 minutes after that to talk about how to organize to pay it off. Then we're going to do an interview with Glendi for about 10 minutes where she's going to answer all these great questions about student loans. And then we'll be available to answer your questions. Remember, there's a question and answer box on your screen. Please use that to submit your questions throughout, and then we'll answer them at the end. To be able to personally manage your personal finances, you need to be able to keep track of money going in and money coming out. And one of the ways to do that is to have a budget or an expense plan. Remember, everyone has a budget no matter how much money they make or how large their net worth. So this is an important skill to learn now rather than wait and find out later that you wished you'd learned how to do it. Number 1, we're going to make a list of expenses. Gather together your existing bills, and if you don't have any financial obligations yet, then make a list of the expenses that you're most likely to have in college, living on campus, such as phone, clothing, weekend food, personal care, etc. I know a lot of you are recent alums or parents, so we're kind of covering the waterfront here. At Trinity, students live on campus for the first 3 years, and their meal plan extends to 7 days a week. So the other thing you need to remember is it's important to pay yourself first, known as saving money. It should be a part of your budget like every other expense. Once you've moved off campus or graduated, then make sure you list rent, utilities, which are gas, electric, water, and food, and transportation like gas, maintenance, parking, and bus fare, as well as rooming, healthcare, clothes, phone, internet, charity, and then travel home on your expense list once you've graduated. Make a list of your sources of income. Young alumni and recently graduated students need to keep in mind that you may only be able to get a job that pays you $28,000 per year when you graduate starting out. This information comes from the Labor Department website, mynextmove.org, where you can look up different jobs, find out the education needed, and the pay you should expect to receive for those jobs. Each pay period and amount of anywhere from 21 to 28% will be taken out of your paycheck. For things like Social Security and Medicare, most businesses pay you every 2 weeks, so you have to learn to make your money last between pay periods. Also remember that you may have health insurance and other benefits taken out of your paycheck, So you need to try to learn how to work with your paycheck and manage your money in between pay periods so that you can pay your bills and live effectively. Mom and dad, I have to tell you, if you're listening, parents, remember, don't give your student too much money while they're in college. I'll tell you why in a moment. 3, understand monthly budgets. Freshmen through juniors live on campus at Trinity. Seniors live off campus. And then, of course, graduates are hopefully gainfully employed and out on their own. College years are the years when students need to learn about how to be creative about money. And remember, after college graduation, you may only be making $2,300 a month. With after taxes are taken out, you may only have about $1,800 a month to spend. So here's the part where parents need to remember not to give their children too much money to live on during their college years. Because if they get used to having too much money, they won't be able to be successful once they graduate and they're finding that they have less money from their paycheck to spend. So don't set your children up for failure. Just give them enough to cover their monthly expenses that they have on campus so that they learn how to live within their means. As a parent of freshmen through juniors, you'll be paying room and board with meals covered for every day of the week. Provide your student just enough to cover their entertainment, clothing, grooming, and transportation. Keep in mind your student will have access to free and discounted activities, both on and off campus, making it possible for them to have a very rich cultural life without spending a lot of money. Learning how to have potluck suppers, clothing swaps, and the like is all a part of this time in a student's life. When your student moves off campus their senior year, you will have added expenses like rent, utilities, cleaning supplies, furnishings, and possibly more costly transportation. So these need to be factored into the budget as well. Upon graduating, in addition, a student, now a graduate, will find that it will be necessary to allocate funds for health insurance, paying off student loan debt, and funds for charitable giving. Because after all, we do want to give back to the communities and the schools that have helped us get to where we are. Each of these budgets shows income at the top and then subtracts expenses. If you find that the expenses in your budget exceed your income, then it will be important to consider either ways to cut expenses, like skipping that latte or the entertainment outing, or to consider a way to increase your income by taking on a part-time job to cover the excess funds you need. If you're fortunate enough to have extra income left over that you have not allocated to expenses as shown on your budget, then do not look for a way to spend that money. Learn how to save it. Number 4, learn to save money. I'm not talking about investments today. So for today, any money you have left over in your budget needs to go into an interest-bearing savings account or an insured money market fund. Make sure you know what fees are charged by your financial institution for withdrawing any money from those accounts and how often you can do so. Find out if there are any penalties assessed for early or frequent withdrawals before you open the account. It is important to remember to pay yourself first, also known as saving money. If you'd like to save $1,000 in 1 year, then all you need to do is save $20 a week. With 52 weeks in the year, we're going to give you 2 weeks off from saving, sort of like a little vacation, and allow you to save for 50 weeks at $20 a week, totaling $1,000 over that period of time. Basically, that means that if you save $4 a day, 5 days out of each week, you can reach your goal in 1 year. Now, we want to organize to pay off our debt because that is the tricky part. There are 2 ways to do it. One is to have a loose leaf notebook. This is what I call the old school way, but it's the way that I've found works the best. And you'll have a loose leaf notebook, you'll have dividers, and you'll have a file folder, or you can create a file folder on your desktop. When you first thing you're going to do is download the loan agreements and print them. You'll put those loan agreements into a separate divider for each loan in your loose leaf notebook. And if you're going to do it electronically, I would create a folder that says something like debt I own or student loan debt, and move the loan document that you've downloaded electronically into that folder so that when you click on it, you can see each loan document separately. And you may have to rename those loan documents so that you'll know what they are. Now, if you're using the paper method, once you've printed out all the documents, you'll place them in the loose leaf notebook under their specific divider for that particular loan. And this not only works for student loans, but it will also work for things like car loans, a mortgage, a credit card bill, something like that, anything that you're trying to pay down so that you can eventually have very little, if hopefully no debt, at some point in the future. I prefer to do this with paper because when you have a document in front of you, you can highlight the pertinent terms of the loan, like the interest rate and the payment schedule and all that sort of thing. Also, I found that when you record payments on your payout sheets, which we'll talk about a little bit later, your brain acknowledges it better when you use a pen on paper rather than when you just use a keystroke and click. You need to understand your loan terms. Keep in mind that your loan will have an interest rate that represents the cost of borrowing money. Some loans have grace periods for a few months after you graduate. Some loans do not charge you interest until you graduate, and some loans are charging you interest all through the years that you have the loans. There will be some loans that allow you to pay interest only, but if you do not, then the interest is capitalized, meaning it is added to the total you owe, causing you to be charged interest on the interest as well as on the initial amount that you borrowed. Since almost 50% of students graduate from Trinity with student loans, before you leave Trinity or before your student leaves Trinity, there's a system in place to help you navigate the payoff system after graduation. You will meet with a representative of Student Financial Services who will go over the amounts you borrowed over the time you've been at Trinity, as well as a list of the loan servicing companies and how to contact those organizations. The other thing you need to do is evaluate your loans. Consider the following. Which ones are charging the highest interest rates? Do any of your loans have deferments that allow you to postpone payments? Do any of your loans have grace periods? Are any of your loans federally subsidized? What are the terms of your loans and when do they mature? These are things that you need to consider. We're very lucky today because we have Glendi Gaddis, Assistant Vice President of Student Financial Services at Trinity, and she is here to answer a few questions about student financial aid and loans. Welcome, Glendi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Share with us the different types of financial aid students at Trinity may find available to them.
Sure. Here at Trinity, we offer a comprehensive financial aid program. And by comprehensive, I mean scholarships, grants, student employment opportunities, but also loan options for both students and parents. And the sources of these various funding opportunities or options comes from the university itself, from federal government funds and state funds, and occasionally external private resources as well.
Great. Can you briefly tell us about federal student loans?
Sure. So under the federal student loans, there are a couple of options. The largest federal student loan program is the William D. Ford Direct Loan Program. And there are a number of options under that program, a number of different types of loans. There is a subsidized loan for undergraduates who demonstrate financial need. There's unsubsidized for undergraduates, but also grad students enrolled in graduate and professional programs. There's a PLUS loan, which is available for parents to borrow on behalf of their dependent undergraduate student. And also the PLUS loan is available to graduate students as well. And then finally, there's the consolidation loan, which is really a loan that borrowers can access after they're done with school and entering into repayment. A second loan program is the Federal Perkins Loan Program. Some of our viewers today may have borrowed under the Federal Perkins Loan Program. That program, however, is coming to its end in September of 2017.
Okay. Can you help us understand the difference between direct loans described as subsidized and unsubsidized loans, please?
Sure, that's a great question, Barbie. Subsidized loans means that someone's paying a subsidy on your behalf if you're the borrower of a subsidized loan. And who is paying that? The federal government. So a subsidized loan means that while the student is enrolled at least half time, the federal government pays the interest during that enrollment period, as opposed to an unsubsidized loan where the interest begins accruing when the funds are dispersed and the borrower is responsible for that interest.
Okay, all right. Now, one of the things I've learned is that parents often do the paperwork for their students. How can they make sure their student understands the debt obligation that they're taking on and that they'll be responsible for once they graduate?
It is very common for parents to be actively a part of the financial aspect of paying for an education at Trinity. And we understand that. But it's really important with these loans, with the exception of the PLUS loan that a parent borrows, that all the other loans are student loans in the name of the student. So ultimately the student is the one assuming the obligation. So we really recommend for parents to assist their student, but keep them involved so that they're aware of the obligation that they're assuming by signing the promissory notes and receiving that loan funding.
Okay, good. Can you briefly tell us about the loans available from Trinity Financial Services, please?
Sure. So I mentioned the federal loans, we've touched on those, but in addition to the federal student loans, Trinity is very fortunate to have an institutional loan program available to students under the Walton loan. It's called the Walton Loan Program. And it was established many years ago by a very generous benefactor, which provided for this funding for generations of students. It operates like a revolving loan account. So when a student receives funding under the Walton loan, as they start to repay it, it makes those funds available for future students.
That's so exciting.
And not every school has that option. So that's really a special thing for Trinity to have that available.
That really is great. So before a student graduates, someone from Trinity Financial Services meets with each student. Tell me about that meeting and the materials provided to students at that time.
Sure. So under the federal student loan programs, there are requirements that actually before a student even receives the first disbursement of their federal direct loan, they must go through a loan counseling session known as an entrance interview. And the entrance interview really focuses on the some of the terms of the loan and really helping students understand or borrowers understand what they're obligating themselves to. But at the end of a student's career, before they separate from the university, and we always, of course, hope that's because they've graduated, the borrowers are required to go through an exit counseling session. And the exit counseling session is really focused on preparing the borrower for repayment. And it can be done, typically it has been done online, an online exercise, but we have found that for many borrowers, having the opportunity to do face-to-face is really beneficial. It's kind of like what you shared with the paper as opposed to the keystroke. So we are now offering that opportunity for students to meet with us individually, where we can go over what they've borrowed and the terms and kind of prepare them for repayment.
That is great. I think that's wonderful that you all meet individually with the students. Can you share some of the things students need to know about repayment and student loan services and how to find that information when it changes?
Yes. So one of the most important things is to know who you borrowed from. So again, I go back to what you shared earlier, the importance of knowing, keeping a record, a system of keeping track of who you borrowed from, how much you borrowed. And one of the things that's really important in the student loan kind of field or area is that it's important to know that oftentimes who you borrowed the money from is not who you will repay. Let me explain what that means, because that's kind of like, what? What it means is that there is another entity in the student loan business called a loan servicer. And the loan servicer is actually where loans are repaid. And so it's very important to not just know who you borrowed from, but who are you going to need to repay? So for instance, here at Trinity, our Walton loan programs, the university is contracted with an entity known as ECSI, and their business and their role is to service loan repayment. And so the payments are actually made to them at the point that a borrower enters into repayment. So know who you borrowed from, know how much you borrowed, and the terms of that, and then who you need to repay.
That's great. I think that a lot of those same things apply to car loans and mortgages. Oftentimes, if you're paying someone completely different than the one that lent you the money. And so all those things, that's great advice for any kind of loan payment that anyone might be involved with. Now, can students meet with financial services each year they're in school to get their student loan borrowing record or history that's cumulative and help them figure out how they're going to pay for their loans in the future?
Yes, absolutely. The staff in student financial services always willing to meet with students, and it goes back to our hope is that students and borrowers are keeping track of this, so we want to help facilitate that if necessary. So always available, happy to visit with students, help them understand what they're borrowing, if they need to borrow, what the best amount, because that's another part of this, is making sure that you don't borrow more than you need. So we're more than happy in student financial services to spend time doing that.
Great, great. Thank you, Glendi, for sharing your 25 years of experience with student loans and your knowledge of financial services at Trinity. Okay, just 2 more things you need to know to be able to manage your finances and pay off debt. You need to create a schedule of payments. And again, I like to do this with real paper, but you can do this on the computer or do both if you wish. So once you get kind of started, you can go from there. Using an Excel spreadsheet along with your student loan borrowing history information or your car loan information or whatever, you can create individual payments for each student loan, car loan, credit card debt, or mortgage if you have one. For each loan, note when your payments are due, what day of the month they're due, and the amount you need to pay regularly to pay off your loan in a timely basis. The timely basis is defined as what the term of the loan tells you or before that date. On the payment sheet, list the debt service agent to be paid. Glendi just talked to you about that. And if you're mailing the funds, the address to which the funds need to be mailed. Remember, you need to mail them 10 days in advance in order for the post office to get them there. Or you can always do this electronically. You want to create a master list so that you can see everything on one page. Loans run down the page, days of the month across the page, fill in the amount across the document. I recommend printing both the master list and the individual payment sheet, put the master list in the front of your notebook and the individual payment sheet in the section of your notebook that applies to a particular loan, or you can save these on a folder on the top of your desktop, depending on your methodology. Once you're finished, if you're doing this electronically, and even if you're not, you may want to send this folder to yourself and archive it in your email, so if you lose this information electronically, you will be able to have it saved to the cloud for you to find it later. The last thing that you need to remember to do is review your finances on a monthly basis. And this applies really across the board, whether you have debt or you don't have debt. Whether you pay your bills electronically or you use snail mail, make sure you have the funds in your account before you pay your bills and debts so that you don't end up paying a lot of horrible fees to your financial institution, or have a check bounce or a transaction not go through. If you have extra money left over, you can pay down your loans, if you have them, pay them off early, or you can set that money aside for savings to create your first nest egg for small emergencies, which is that $1,000 that I mentioned earlier. After you've saved your $1,000, then start saving 6 to 9 months of expenses that you need to have in the event of serious emergencies, such as a change of job or losing your job, or maybe a medical emergency that puts you out of work and where you're not making as much money. And finally, once you've saved $1,000 and the 6 to 9 months of expenses, you can now work on creating a portfolio of investments for your future. Thank you for joining us today for the Trinity Enrichment Seminar about managing your personal finances and paying off student loan debts. Now, Glendi Gaddis of Trinity Student Financial Services, and I will be here to answer your questions. Please submit them through the question and answer box on your screen.
Thank you, ladies. That was very, very informative. And we actually do have several questions popping up right now. The first question is, will we be able to access a copy of the PowerPoint after the presentation? So, number one, this whole presentation will be posted on trinity.com or trinity.edu under the Tiger Network. So the PowerPoint will be there. The whole webinar will be there. So hopefully that answers that question. If not, please post that question again if you want the actual PowerPoint, and I'm sure we can figure out how to get that to you. All right, second question. What tools are best for gathering information for expenses and creating and reviewing budgets?
Okay, all right. There's some general rules of thumb when you're creating a budget. The biggest part of your budget is usually your rent or your housing. And the general rule of thumb is you shouldn't spend more than 25% of your take-home pay on rent, which when you look at that PowerPoint, if you're one of those people who ask for it, you'll notice that that number is really, when you're only making, taking home $1,800 a month, that's not a lot of money, which means you're either going to need to have a roommate or several roommates, or you're going to need to maybe consider seeing if mom and dad will rent you a room if you're working in the city where your parents live. So that's one of the key, I guess, the keystones when you're setting up a budget. As far as everything else, I mean, obviously you need to compare and contrast. If you're going to live in a city like New York City, having a car is silly because you have to pay ridiculous parking. So that would be where you would research mass transit and make decisions about, gee, how far do I want to live from where my job is? And how much is that going to cost me both time and money-wise? As far as food is concerned, well, we all have to eat. I've heard from a lot of my friends who are vegans that their bills are a lot less than those of us who are carnivores, so that may be a decision that you have to make as well. As far as entertainment is concerned, there are a tremendous number of things available for free out there, and you just need to pay attention and do research. You can actually look online, you can search for free activities in whatever town you're in, and a lot of things will pop up. I hope that is a complete enough answer to start with.
Okay, great. Is it better to put extra income into savings or pay down debt early?
You want me to answer that? Okay. Well, my personal opinion is that you need to have that nest egg, that $1,000 if you can, because a lot of things go wrong. If you have a car, you may need to replace a tire. You may need to fly home if somebody in the family is ill. You yourself might have an emergency dental procedure and have a copay or something that you'll have to make. So I believe in start the nest egg, see if you can save that $1,000. Once you've saved that, then I think you need to start paying down your debt and start working on that 6 to 9 months of expenses. During the 2008 financial crisis, when a lot of people lost their jobs, people who had money set aside to cover expenses till they were able to find a new job, yeah, everyone was panicking, but they weren't panicking quite so much. So I know that's probably not a black and white answer like you'd like, but that would be the way I would approach it.
Great, Barbie, to follow up on that, we had somebody ask, after saving the $1,000 over that 9-month period, what do you do next after paying down the debt? You do something with a portfolio was the question.
Okay. Let me just kind of review the steps. Save your $1,000, pay down your debt, save 6 to 9 months of expenses because you want to have that set aside, as I mentioned, in case you lose your job or you have a great job opportunity, but maybe it doesn't start in a couple of months and you want to take a little break, whatever. Then you start working on things like putting money aside to create your own investment portfolio or to save for a particular goal. Let's say you want to buy a house or a condominium, or say you want to buy a car. As you may have guessed, I'm not a big debt lover. I kind of feel like it's better to save the money and then pay for things, buy a used car instead of a new car. Most homes, if you're going to buy something now, you have to have 20% down in cash and then get to finance the remaining 80%. So developing a good savings habit will pay off in the future.
Okay, can you touch again on what the Walton loan is?
Sure. So the Walton loan is it's actually established here at Trinity. It's considered an institutional loan. It was established by an endowment, so funds that a donor gave, and the terms of that gift was that the university would use the funds to create a loan account, a revolving loan fund that could be lent out to students and or parents, and then as they repaid them, those funds, that it would come back and we would just be able to continue that on for generations of Trinity students. So under the Walton loan program, there are a series of different kinds of loans. So there is a Walton parent loan, there is a Walton family loan, and a Walton Perkins loan. So there are some various types of loan programs underneath the umbrella of the Walton loan program, and depending on the student's eligibility, they have different eligibility criteria. At the point that students are applying for assistance here at the university, the financial aid staff within Student Financial Services is determining which loan option a student might or their parents might be eligible for.
Okay, thank you. It looks like our last question is, do students who have already graduated from Trinity have access to any of the services Student Financial Services at Trinity provides the students?
Great question. And, you know, it's, I think, kind of like what we're doing today. Once a tiger, always a tiger. So absolutely, we are more than happy to provide assistance as much as we can to graduates. And sometimes we're not always, we may not be able to answer the question. We may have to direct the student on to someone, or the borrower, alumnus, onto someone else. But at least we can help them figure out what are the questions to ask, who do they need to contact. So absolutely, those services don't go away once you graduate. We're still here.
Great. Thank you, ladies. I want to thank all the alumni across the world that joined us for today's Tiger Enrichment Lifelong Learning webinar. Trinity's motto is discover, grow, become. This webinar series for alumni gives us all the opportunity to stay engaged and connected with Trinity and continue with lifelong learning, no matter where we live. Our next Tiger Enrichment Lifelong Learning webinar is on August 25th, and the topic is Conscious Capitalism and the Future of Business, a discussion with Trinity alumna Thea Durfee-Polonczyk, class of 1990. Now, in case you didn't know, the 2016 Summer Trinity Reading Together book is called Salt, Sugar, Fat, How the Food Giants Hooked Us by Michael Moss. So pick up a copy today and read along with the Trinity community. Have a great summer, and I'll see you in August. Bye, Tigers.